author, columnist, managing editor of LibertyNation.com, podcast host and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's edition, we are talking everything within the Beltway and beyond and examining the economic substructures that are currently holding up the economy. It's going to be quite the show. Please remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Welcome, and you're on Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides, and we're joined by Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent, Mr. Graham J. Noble. Thanks for coming in, Graham.
My pleasure, Mark. Good to be here.
So, for me, this whole political week has been defined by the self-immolation tour of the Democratic Party, and I'm no fan of either party particularly, but it does sadden me somewhat to see what great depths the Democratic Party, that has been a good party in its time. I mean, let's move forward past the KKK years, of course, but in their time they have been a decent party. But now it's almost like ritual humiliation of themselves is the modus operandi for how to function as the opposition government. Graham, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that this isn't really happening.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mark, but I just can't do that. I mean, it is insane. I mean, when you think, and like you said about the Democratic Party as a whole, now, I've never been personally in line with their ideology, but nevertheless, there was a time when they were at least kind of rational and reasonable and regardless of whether or not you like their policies, they were doing things properly, and they were operating better as a party. They were operating more efficiently. They knew how to reach out to the voters. They knew how to play the political game. And now it seems like they've forgotten how to do that. I mean, Trump has just driven them all so completely, I won't use a word I was going to use, but so completely crazy that they seem to have forgotten how to do politics.
It's not just politics, though, is it? It's communication as well. I mean, you've got, I know a lot of people thought that Barack Obama was the great communicator, but for my money, Bill Clinton was always better at speaking.
I would agree. I would agree with you on that. I think Barack Obama was way overrated. He's very good at, kind of reciting a written speech and parroting it and putting enough inflection in it to make it sound like he was saying it off the top of his head. Yeah. But really, he wasn't a great off the cuff speaker. Nothing like Trump. But yes, even
Bill Clinton, a
better speaker. Yeah.
So there's this thing about communication, and what we're seeing now is just it's communication in completely the wrong way. And for those of you who do spend time on X, there's a meme with Steve Buscemi going to a high school. How do you do, fellow kids? And this is really what seems to be happening. And the comms, I'm assuming it's the comms director for the party who's overseeing what social media platforms, what kind of videos they're putting out. But we had a bunch of ladies from the Democrat Congressional Caucus acting out like a Street Fighter bouncing image. Choose your fighter. I'm not sure who that's trying to appeal to, because I guess that hasn't been around for anybody who's under 45. That's probably not even culturally relevant.
Those people, the people that they are trying to reach out to, which is the youngest kind of strata of voters or soon to be voters, those people don't even remember that particular video game. I'm sure that was so long ago.
Yeah. And then there was this video out of Representative, I think she's from Connecticut. It's Rosa DeLauro, and she's in her 80s. You'll recognize her. She's the lady with the purple hair. That's it. And she's in a video, face to camera, walking through Congress. And I'm going to quote some words here, but hey there, I'm the head Rizzler of the Appropriations Committee, Skibbity. Now, this to me is an 80-year-old woman who's supposed to be somebody admirable, somebody to look up to, somebody to even emulate for the nation's young women to, achieve a position in the United States Congress. That's something. That means something. And she's wandering around saying the word skibbity as if A, she knows what it even means. B, the people who are actually going to hear this know what it really means. Because there's very few young kids walking around thinking, I wonder what my Connecticut congresswoman's up to. And they check her out on social media. And it's just, it's humiliating to such a degree that I feel very, very bad for members of the party whose communications team are insisting that they engage in this drivel. Graham,
Yeah, I mean,
what's the comeback?
It's embarrassing on every level because it's not. They're literally not getting any part of it right. You can't even look at the Democrats' efforts now to remain relevant, and you can't even say, well, they've got that bit right, but they're not quite doing that bit. They just need to tweak this, tweak that. No, they need to just start again from scratch because it's like they don't know how to message. They don't seem to understand who they're trying to get with the messaging. They literally don't. I guess it's like, if to be a successful company, you've got to know your potential, you've got to know your customers and your potential customers, and you've got to know how to communicate with them. They don't even seem to know who their potential customers are, what their potential customers want. They don't know how to talk to them. It's so, I don't even know where to begin.
I'll take that analogy one step further, Graham. I like that analogy. They're also a company that isn't entirely sure what they're selling.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So it actually on
the
that
message basically seems to be this, Mark, is okay. We don't know who our customers are, and we also, as you said, we don't really know what we're selling them. All we know is that they're not buying it because they're stupid and racist.
I'd say that sums it up very well. I mean, that would actually be better messaging than what's coming out from the comms team at present. But there's, I think, something indicative of this lack of awareness of what they're trying to be. And it's important. I think it really is important that the Democrat Party as a whole figure out precisely what it is. Because it's bad for the country to have one party. One functioning party. It's terrible for the country, in fact, to have only one functioning party. And what we've seen is that there appears not to be any coalescing of ideas that aren't, what's the right way to say it, subject to an ideological purity test. And I think we saw this with Senator Chuck Schumer recently, who bit the bullet, as it were, and voted for the continuing resolution to keep the lights on in government. And then all of a sudden you have a number of representatives in the House, Democrat representatives in the House, clearly avoiding answering the question about whether Chuck Schumer should be booted out on his rear end and whether Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez should primary him and get him out of office entirely, and that they're being so coy about it. When really, I mean, a party that's united, that's trying to do something, to be an effective opposition, should be saying, Chuck Schumer's our leader. He's done a great job for X many years, however many years he's been in there. And he deserves our respect, and he's got it, and we've got his back. They should be saying that if they want to do anything effective. But why aren't they? What's happening with this internecine warfare?
Well, I think it's very simple. And you said a moment ago something that is absolutely true, which is that it's very bad for any country when there is only one functioning party. But here's the problem. Not only are Democrats, the Democratic Party, not only is it dysfunctional at the moment, but also most Democrats, and I'm not going to say all of them because there are a few there who are still haven't completely lost their minds, but most of them, their basically platform right now is based on one simple thing: we will not engage at all with the Trump administration. We will not compromise on anything. We won't even discuss the possibility of compromising with Trump and his administration. And so therefore, kind of almost by extension then, with congressional Republicans. So, okay, yes, it's bad to have only one functioning party, but it's just as bad if one of the parties, the opposition party, is simply not even willing to engage at all. And you see, that's the thing with Chuck Schumer. They're just now, kind of lambasting him and kind of like distance themselves from him simply because he decided to avoid a government shutdown, which Democrats have always said that's like a terrible, terrible thing. You can't shut down the government. And so Chuck Schumer chose to actually support a continuing resolution that was also supported by President Trump. And that is the reason why now, so literally, it's like the Democratic Party is literally saying, if anyone in our party does anything at all that kind of is even vaguely in alignment with Donald Trump, then they're dead to us. And that's crazy.
Well, it's actually worse than that. Chuck Schumer had a book come out last week, I think it was Anti-Semitism in America or something, and he had to shut down his proposed book tour or reschedule it because of threats of protest. Now, these are not Republicans going out protesting Chuck Schumer writing a book on anti-Semitism. These are Democrats going out, planning to go out and approach them, so much so that for safety reasons they have to pull his book tour, and that's a fairly shameful day. We're going to be back with Graham J. Noble after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent, Graham J. Noble. So, Graham, earlier we were talking the sad, slow self-humiliation that the Democratic Party is currently putting itself through in some weird form of political hara-kiri, I guess. Madness just isn't reserved to one political party. It appears across the country that Tesla owners, or former Tesla owners, or regretful Tesla owners are also having a bit of a tough time.
Well, it's all rather silly, of course, is that, they're trying to bring back the whole cancel culture thing and direct it against Elon Musk purely because, first of all, because he aligned himself with now President Trump, and then, of course, because he's not technically in charge of DOGE, actually, the Department of Government Efficiency, but of course he is kind of the driving force behind it. I guess you could
the figurehead, yeah,
absolutely, yeah. It's the kind of point man, if you like, and of course, they're slashing and burning their way through government agencies and laying off large numbers of federal employees. So now, of course, they decided that, they're going to go after Tesla, obviously Elon Musk's electric vehicle company, going after Tesla. But of course, a lot of them already started driving Teslas because they're all about saving the planet. And now they're selling them, getting rid of them. Not only that, though, but a lot of activists are actually threatening Tesla owners and going on social media and making videos saying if you know what's good for you, you'll sell your Tesla. And of course, they're going around and vandalizing them, which of course the great irony of the people who scream about global warming and we've got to drive electric vehicles in order to save the planet are now literally trying to destroy the largest all electric vehicle manufacturer in the world.
Yeah, it's quite something to see these people wanting to get rid of the most successful electric vehicle company, in the world because they have a political upset with Elon Musk. And it's not really just threats on Twitter. We have seen actual vehicles, people attacked in their vehicles. We've had dealerships have been firebombed. I was reading, and shots were fired
and even shot at. In some
Yes.
cases.
Yeah, Elon Musk confirmed that in a recent interview on CNN. And so you've got this idea that because it's Elon Musk, therefore the car company must suffer. But then, of course, they go on X and they start putting these videos and these threats. So it's like they want to shut down one of his businesses, but by putting content, and remember, a picture of somebody attacking a Tesla is going to get a lot of views on X. And so denigrate one of his companies, but then use his other company to spread it, and of course earning more income. It's a very ill thought position.
Well, and there's another slight angle to that as well. The kind of the cognitive dissonance, if you like, you might want to call it, about this whole attacking Tesla. And I wrote about this kind of a little while ago on the pages of libertynation.com. And that is the fact that, who would you imagine are most likely to have invested in Tesla stock? It's probably people on the left, and they've probably got that Tesla stock in their 401ks. And then, maybe if they do a little bit of dabbling in trading stocks, then they probably bought Tesla stock. And it's gone down, I believe, since kind of the end of last year. It's down a huge amount. I believe perhaps even something like 40% or
41%, I think.
I mean, at one point towards the end of last year, it was Tesla was trading at something like $431 a share, and now it's around, generally speaking, around $220 a share. And so the Tesla stock owners, many of whom may be kind of left-wingers, Democrat voters who are all about saving the environment, they have taken a huge financial hit. Elon Musk can afford to take a financial hit. A lot of these people can't.
Yeah, so it's the cars that they bought, the stock they invested in, and now they're boycotting it somehow. But of course, we saw Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, and he was very public about it. He's gone and traded in his Tesla, and he's bought himself a petrol vehicle, a good old gasoline guzzler, because who cares about your stated environmentalist bona fides when you can stick it to Elon Musk? Just to wrap this up, Graham, I've noticed that a lot of the ire is reserved for Elon Musk in particular and Doge, but so few people appear critical of the actual programs that are being cut and the actual savings that are being made.
It's just about this fear that the left has of anything to do with shrinking government. That terrifies them, because they like their big government, and of course they see it. It's a massive slush fund for left-wing activist groups as well, and this is all getting taken away, and that's really, and I think at the end of the day, really, it all comes down to the Benjamins, I think, more than anything else.
Graham J. Noble, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're joined by Liberty Nation's economics guru, Mr. Andrew Moran. Andrew, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So there's exactly one reason why I wanted to scramble you today, and that's to get your hard-boiled opinion on the egg crisis, or lack thereof, because we had, since Donald Trump's inauguration, we've heard a litany of discussion from Democrats and people in the left-leaning media, although I repeat myself, about egg prices and how Donald Trump's failing to fix egg prices, and he's focusing on all these other things, but he's not fixing egg prices, as if he went on the campaign stage with a chicken saying, cluck, cluck, I'm here to fix your egg prices. Although I do remember I think it was a Saturday Night Live thing about Trump chicken. see if our post coordinator can figure out to find that clip and insert.
Yeah, I know what it is.
So, Andrew, give me the saga of the eggs, please.
Well, it's no yolk, really. It's
No yolk. Right.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the progressive lawmakers, I mean, they really turned this into a joke because they expected Donald Trump to solve eggflation in just 2 weeks of in terms of the White House. It was absolutely absurd. Okay, so you look at the numbers. So in the CPI report show that over the last 12 months, egg prices have soared 58%. In just February alone, it climbed more than 10%. The problem is that those are actually lagging indicators because if you look at the real-time numbers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, you see a complete collapse of wholesale egg prices. The last number I checked, they actually collapsed below $4, and it's lower than before Donald Trump took office. So you're seeing the eggflation prices start to dissipate.
So it's an interesting position, isn't it? Because you have for years, we had people in the Democratic Party saying, and in the media, and again, I repeat myself, that presidents can't control prices. Unless, of course, they put in price controls, which was floated at one point. But then Donald Trump gets in it, and so that they start trying to use, I suppose, what's good for the goose is good for the gander in this respect. And saying Donald Trump isn't bringing down egg prices. But the egg prices have come down, and I'm wondering which version of reality is true here. Did Donald Trump bring down egg prices, or did egg prices come down and now we're just waiting for Donald Trump to take a victory lap, even though he didn't actually do anything to bring down egg prices?
The USDA they have a weekly update of the egg prices situation, and one of the contributing factors for the decline has been demand destruction. So that's an economics term whereby prices go up so much that people just don't want to buy it anymore. Therefore, that has allowed egg producers to catch up to any level of demand there was by increasing supply. I also think the other factor was because, of course, the market is always forward looking. So the White House, it released a $1 billion 5-point plan to ease the egg prices of rocketing prices. A few of them included, providing relief to farmers. Another one was deregulating the industry, which is hard because a lot of it is state run. The other one was investing in vaccines for chickens, which of course you would be hesitant to
well, as long as those chickens are social distancing and wearing little chicken masks, I'm sure be just as effective.
But because the previous administration, the only way it tackled the issue was just culling all the birds, all the affected birds. But
right, you're talking about the avian flu.
Yes. Yeah, so the new administration is taking a multifaceted approach. I think it's a multitude of factors of basic economics and public policy reaction to eggflation.
So it seems that the idea that you could do something about a whole market with a single policy prescription, I mean, that was just lunacy from the start, wasn't it? Every complex system inevitably, I mean, there's no such thing as just cutting the Jordan knot in this kind of circumstance. It needs an array. What we're having is the egg prices are coming down, which brings me very nicely on to gas prices are also coming down. And while that may elicit some cheers because it feels very much like we're back in 2017 where, gas was cheap and plentiful, which, of course, we'll get on to how this impacts business later, but personal household incomes, it feels very much like that. But it's not necessarily a good thing that gas prices are dropping, is it? Or is it?
Well, so I guess you're referring to something I shared in our private chat when it came to Market Watch. Market Watch had an article saying, yes, gas prices are falling below $3, but that's a bad thing for the economy. But my gripe is that when gas prices were steadily declining, they all started cheering and saying, "Oh, good job, President Biden." Okay, so let's look at the numbers. So the average, GasBuddy.com, it recently reported that gas prices are the lowest in March ever since the onset of since 2021. The American Automobile Association says the national average price of gasoline at the time of the recording it was about a little above $3 a gallon. So those are positive trajectories for consumers and businesses, motorists, yada yada yada. Now you have to look at the reason why gasoline prices are falling. So at the onset of the inauguration, oil prices just started tanking. So they're down about 7% year to date. They've fallen around 15% since, or about 12 to 15% since President Trump returned to the White House. Now, there are many reasons why this. One of them was because there's an expectation that the U.S. and the world economy would start producing more oil. Another factor was OPEC and OPEC Plus. They agreed to suspend the production cuts and start restarting output this spring or this summer. That's another reason. Chinese demand has waned because the economy is slowing. It's China's the world's largest petroleum importer. So that's been a considerable factor. Economic concerns that there's going to be less demand for gasoline and oil. So a lot of it is market based. Now, you and I have had this discussion whether the administration's policies is going to facilitate more output. Now, that's quite questionable because of the break-even point for the industry. But whether or not you're going to slash energy prices in half, as President Trump promised within 12 months, I think it's not very likely. But oil prices falling, that's been pretty. I mean, the president could take probably a victory lap early because of that.
Yeah, I would imagine the market reaction there has probably something to do with there's an expectation that Donald Trump is a pro-energy president, and therefore, as you say, the markets are forward-looking. That they're never based on what's happening today, but they've got this expectation that because of policies that Trump will implement or regulations that will be rescinded, there's going to be more of a glut of energy, and therefore they can get their energy supplies out, and that it creates an excess, so that it's a cheaper value or lower value on the cost of it. Then, so that's good for regular consumers. They can fill up their gas tank a lot cheaper. But let's talk about how this impacts businesses, because I suspect that businesses everywhere are going to be taking as much advantage as they can of this. And I know it's difficult for them to, obviously they can't use all of their energy requirements. Well, let's use them today, for the year ahead because it's energy. But there's a lot of positive impacts commercially, right?
Well, absolutely, because input cost pressures, I mean, they've been elevated for the last few years mainly because of energy. But energy affects a wide array of things, including the feed, because you have to produce the feed. So, yeah. So, I recently read a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and one industry that has been significantly impacted by inflationary pressures has been the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector, they've suffered about an inflation rate of between 3.5% and 6% over the last few years. Now, they think that in the year ahead, their inflation costs are going to remain elevated. But I sometimes wonder, are they taking energy costs into account for these manufacturing facilities, or what they produce, or how much energy that they consume? So overall, these energy prices, if they come down, if they continue, or at least at the very least remain where they are, that's going to have a positive impact for the broader economy. And that's also, of course, going to help with the inflation situation, outside of the core inflation aspect of the CPI report or the Fed's PC report or even PPI. That's going to lead to what's the term? It's a flood of lower costs for businesses across both the goods producing sector and the services economy.
I'm wondering how much of a part. Now, I'm not saying that Trump's an anti-green president, but he's certainly less wedded to the idea as previous administrations have been. And we notice it in Europe particularly, and in the United Kingdom specifically. Energy prices are monumental compared to the US. But there's this constant push to get more and more of the energy supply from what they term the renewables. And this is really just driving up costs like crazy.
Well, I think at least in the United States, the whole green energy push, I think it's slowly dying. I think that the new administration is creating an environment whereby it's all the above approach. So there you're gonna have the fossil fuels, you're gonna have natural gas, crude oil, gasoline, renewables, winds, solar. I think you have various different strategies to keep the power supply running or to fuel, let's say, artificial intelligence. So it's not going to be this hyper focus on building a windmill on the East Coast and killing the whales, as some people have speculated.
It's not killing them; it's just making them crazy so they kill themselves.
But I mean, the left. I mean,
That's true. That's actually true. That's the funny thing about. Well, this funny tragic thing about. Sorry, Karen.
I would say in the last few months, I think you can bet that the left never really cared about the climate, considering their hatred now for Tesla electric vehicles. Because you had Senator Mark Kelly the other day saying, "Oh, I'm getting rid of my Tesla and I'm going to buy this gas guzzling Chevy Tahoe." So maybe so once they start abandoning Teslas, I think they are abandoning now the green.
I reckon so too, Andrew. Right, we're going to be back with Andrew after this short break, discussing wider economic impacts.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Andrew back on Liberty Nation Radio. We are continuing our conversation with Liberty Nation's economics editor, Andrew Moran. Now, Andrew, let's talk about some of the recent fears that have been stoked, the sum of all fears, and those are recession fears. The R word has made a comeback. What's happening with that?
Well, I think it all started when it came to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's GDP Now model estimate. For weeks heading into March, it had forecasted growth, at least 2 or 3% for the first quarter. Then out of nowhere, it just collapsed, and now it's forecasting 2.8% contraction for the first quarter. It's been revised up a little bit, but for the most part, still signaling a decline in GDP. Now, so this triggered a complete meltdown of one of the triggers for the complete meltdown of financial markets. The Wall Street's lost about $5 trillion in value because of this sell-off that were mainly contributed to by tariffs. But the Atlanta Fed actually came out with a report on X confirming, trying to make a couple of clarifications, saying, the main reason why there was a contraction in the GDP Now model estimate was because of gold imports. There was such an anomaly in a recent Bureau of Economic Analysis report that showed a huge spike, an intensification of imports of gold. Now, that should lead to, wider questions of why. But so that was the main thing. So they said that if you remove that component...
Yeah, you've got to get there before Trump and Musk go knocking at Fort, go searching at Fort Knox. Right?
Exactly. But if the economist here, I think is Patrick Higgins, he said if you remove that trade component of the GDP, that actually shows a positive increase in the GDP. So, of course, Trump's critics, they're going to seize on that if the April first quarter report shows a decline in GDP.
Yeah, it's all about measurements as far as I can tell, because you have your GDP, and that's the sum of all things that are taking place. And then you end up with this massive gold import, and it skews things, but it actually doesn't point to the economy doing worse. The economy is actually doing, as far as I can tell, the economy appears to be doing better, or at least that's what the CPI suggests, the recent CPI suggests, doesn't it?
Wall Street would tell you that the economy is on the brink of just annihilation, considering what's going on in the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ. Yeah. Now, if you want to talk about the CPI, so the CPI showed a positive direction for inflation because it was pretty broad-based easing of inflationary pressures. I think for the shelter that made up about at least a third of the monthly increase in inflation. Now, looking ahead to the next consumer price index report, according to the Cleveland Fed's inflation nowcasting model, it shows that the headline inflation number is going to ease to 2.5% from its current 2.8%, and core it's going to flirt between 2.9 and 3% for the first time in 4 years. So overall, inflation is heading in the positive direction. Now, there's widespread concerns that perhaps this is just a blip in the radar and it's not sustainable because of tariffs, how tariffs are going to lead to price adjustments across the board.
Okay, so let's talk about those tariffs for a second then. Yeah, all right, just for a second. I mean, it's a very small topic. So there's a lot of uncertainty because nobody actually I mean, we have historical models that show when tariffs are applied, certain things are going to happen. That's pretty much that prices for consumers on goods that they buy from overseas will go up. And I think that's probably a reasonable assessment. That's what the economists are warning. That's what's historically happened. But I'm wondering what that does for US-based businesses.
So at least on the pricing side, so Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he's been saying numerous times how he doesn't expect inflation to rise across the continuum. He thinks that at the most it's going to be a one-time price adjustment, and that's what actually a lot of economic observers think is going to happen. Now, when it comes to U.S.-based businesses, there is so much concern among them. I mean, all these surveys of executives and certain industry leaders, they all say the same thing, that they're worried about the uncertainty of tariffs and they're worried about higher input costs. So so you're actually seeing some of that already transpiring even before the tariffs are in place. So you have something called purchasing managers indexes. These are surveys of certain executives, let's say the manufacturing sector, who signal the prevailing economic direction of certain sectors. So you had, let's say, the S&P Global Insights Manufacturing PMI that actually showed an acceleration of price pressures. Even selling inflation was higher. The New York Fed's Empire State Manufacturing Index also showed elevated price pressures. The Institute for Supply Management's Manufacturing and Services PMIs also showed a reacceleration of price pressure. So you're having all these higher costs that are starting to accumulate without even before the widespread tariffs going into effect. Because remember, the President Trump's 25% tariffs on steel aluminum, they just recently went into effect. And the reciprocal tariffs, which is scheduled for April 2nd, that's still going to take time to seep through the broader economy because tariffs do have a lag effect. One of the things that oil prices also crashed on was because of terrifying fears of
terrifying
of a lower demand from a tariff-fueled economic downturn. So that's also one of the reasons. So I guess that for President Trump, it's more of a offsetting one thing over another. So yeah, you have the tariffs, but then the tariffs are also going to lower energy costs because of fears about demand. And another thing too, lowering interest rates, because that's one of the things the administration has targeted. You see why they have President Trump and others in his administration have kept quiet about the Federal Reserve, because they've seen Treasury yields decline on, once again, tariff fears, recession concerns, all those things. So the administration is achieving lower interest rates without having the Federal Reserve to do anything at all. And you're seeing this may be a different conversation, but you're seeing this seep into other credit markets. So you're seeing mortgage rates starting to come down gradually. You're seeing even auto rates coming down gradually. You're seeing higher approval rates for auto loans in an easy market. So overall, I mean, for now, without the full impact of tariffs, the economic climate is in pretty good shape. Or signaling that it's in good shape.
Let's just touch on that again, Andrew. Come back. So I want to make sure I'm understanding that. So because the Treasury yields are going down, interest rates are essentially it's a covert drop in interest rates. Is that?
Yeah, because so let's look at mortgage rates, for example.
Sure.
Mortgage rates, they tend to track the 10-year yield.
Yes.
The 10-year yield was spiking from September, despite the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates, and it spiked about more than 100 basis points. But since it reached a peak in mid-January, mortgage rates have been gradually coming down. So it's making things more affordable for prospective home buyers.
That's actually pretty interesting. So it would. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it would actually be in the administration's interest, because obviously the administration wants popular support from the country at large. So it's actually in their interest to keep the markets a little bit unstable and to keep pushing some price pressures.
Yeah, that's been a lot of theories. If you comb through X, you see a lot of theories.
I try not to too much, but.
But you see a lot of independent economists making that case that Treasury the Trump White House is trying to engineer some sort of slowdown to help bring down Treasury yields. And but it should be interesting if there's going to be a higher demand in the coming Treasury auctions for Treasury securities based on falling yields.
Andrew Moran, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for today's edition of Liberty Nation Radio. Thank you for being here. You are appreciated. Please remember Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. Thanks for coming along.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.